Welcome back to the next lecture of DCE. So we have again completed with the first module. We are already on course in the second module, which is image compression. So let's start with it. So the first topic we started with was discrete cosine transform, DCT. So these were the various types of images we studied. So this was a HD image. This was a full HD image 1920x1080, and this is a 4K image. So we saw that they require hundreds to thousands of megabytes of data to store. So that is why compression is very important. So compression is inevitable for storing and transmitting data. We also stressed apart from storing on transmitting data, because if the file is very large, the transmission time will be large. So that is also one of the reasons to compress. Then we talked about transforms. Why we talked about transforms? Because the main things which aid in compression are transforms. Remember, I said aid in compression and which compress. I didn't say use the word which compress. I said aid in compress. So transforms aid in compression. What helps in compression is actually the quantization. So these just help us to compress, but the actual compression is done by what? Quantization. So why transforms? Because if you see, this is a time domain signal. It is converted to the frequency domain signal using Fourier transform. So you see there is only two peaks. So we have to work only with two peaks rather than at each and every instant of time in the time domain. And since we are very comfortable with time domain, we, after working on this signal, we again come to the original signal by taking the inverse of the transform. So if you define a transform, its inverse is also always defined. So the first transform we studied was DCT, discrete cosine transform, and it is used in JPEG and MPEG. So these are the formulas, we will not go there. And why is DCT important? Because of concentration of energy in one part of the matrix, and most of the other coefficients of the matrix are 0. And then we come to quantization part. So DCT becomes DCT cube. So early coefficients, that is to the top left, are quantized finely and later coarsely. Why? Because the later coefficients are mostly zeros. Then quantization is nothing but approximation. So this was a correlated data example. This is a correlated data. These are after applying the formula we get DCT coefficients. So if you observe, most of the values are 0. So after quantizing, they become almost exactly 0, and we approximate to the nearest integer. So if we take the inverse DCT, as I said, we have an inverse of each and every transform. We see that both are approximately equal. So this is an example of a continuous tone image. We see both are almost same. Then we have uncorrelated, also called as random data. So this is the uncorrelated data. These are just random values. So we take, these are the DCT coefficients after applying the DCT formula. So these are the quantized values. So you see there are not many zeros. So if you take the reconstructed data, it is very bad as compared to the original data. So DCT is not good for random data or uncorrelated data. So this is again a black and white image. So it is not good for black and white images as well. So then yesterday we started with JPEG. JPEG stands for what? Joint Photographic Experts Group. It should be experts here. So it is what? Lossy as well as a lossless compression. Many less people don't know that it can also be a lossless compression depending on the algorithm we choose. And it is used for color as well as grayscale images, and it is not applicable for black and white images. So what are the goals? It is high compression ratio, use of many parameters, that is, it allows the expert users to experiment. Then we can use any continuous image to obtain good results, and it should not be too complex. Then we said there are 4 modes of operation. We took the example of what? Progressive compression. So image is compressed in multiple blocks, right? So the steps we considered, there were 7 steps. In the first step, first 2 steps are skipped for grayscale images, so I will not go there. Then what we do, we divide. Since we are going to use DCT, DCT requires a block of 8 by 8 always. So we divide each color component into groups of 8 by 8 pixels, which are called as data units. Then what we do, then we apply the DCT to each data unit, and after that we quantize it. So step 4 is applying DCT, step 5 is applying quantization. So we will have since there it is a 8 by 8 block, so there will be 64 numbers, so we will have 64 quantization coefficients, and usually we use most of the times the quantization table provided by the JPEG team only. So then finally, after we get the quantized frequency coefficients, we encode them either using Huffman coding or RLE. So what is RLE, which stands for run length encoding, we'll see in with the example today. It is not in the syllabus, that's why I have not covered it. So then the last step is finally to what? Add headers, which is the usual case. You might have studied in microprocessor also. We usually add headers later on for all the formats, and then we output the result. Then we said it is a symmetric compression method for decompression. That is, we exactly follow the reverse steps. This was the example. This was a 1024 by 512 image consisting of 5,24,288 pixels. So you divide this by 64, so you will get 8192 data units. So this is the representation 0 to 8192 in blocks of 8 by 8. Why again 8 by 8? Because we are using DCT. So then there were various scan methods, 2 scan methods which we discussed. So I will not go into that. So let's now start with the new topic, which is JPEG LS. Now what does LS stand for here is lossless. So the first thing is why we require a JPEG lossless, because we already have a lossless algorithm, as I said. Where is it? Yeah, here. So we already have a lossless algorithm, right? So why we require a JPEG LS new standard? So that is just given in this link. The problem is the lossless mode of JPEG is inefficient and often is not even implemented because of for some reasons. As a result, the International Standards Organization, which is a body which develops these standards, developed a new standard for the lossless or near lossless, we can say, compression of continuous tone images, remember. And what it resulted in? It resulted in recommendation of IOC IEC CD 14495. This is a technical name popularly known as JPEG LS. Now these are names like you have for Wi-Fi IEEE 802.4.1. I don't remember the exact name. Then you have IEEE 801, 802 standards. So in the same way, the JPEG LS standard is named in this way, 14495 ISO IEC CD 14495. So very important university question is, what is the difference between JPEG and JPEG LS? So the first thing is, it is a lossless thing. So DCT we use along with quantization, so it will result in losses. So since it is a lossless technique, it does not use DCT. Then it does not apply arithmetic coding also. We see it uses a variant of arithmetic coding called as QM coder. So it does not employ that coding technique here. Then we use quantization in a very restricted way. Why we use in a restricted way? Because we want lossless. So that is why we use it in a restricted way. So then how does JPEG LS work? So we will study the principle of operation of JPEG LS. So what it does is, these are the pixels of the image A, B, C, D, X, Y and Z. So depending on this, it first selects the context for the pixel. So let's see what is context of a pixel. JPEG LS examines several of the previous scene's neighbors of the current pixel. So for example, let's see X is our current pixel to be encoded or compressed. So it uses the previously seen neighbors, that is, let's say A, B, C and D as the context of the pixel. So previously seen neighbors are what? A, B, C and D. So X is the current pixel. So what is the context of the pixel is A, B, C and D, because they are what? Previously seen neighbors. Then what it does? It uses the context to predict the pixel and to select a probability distribution out of several such. Then what it does is uses that distribution to encode the prediction error with a special Golomb code. Now what is this Golomb code? It is similar to our other codes which we have studied, Huffman coding, arithmetic coding, etc. So this is the other form of code. I am not discussing that because it is not part of the syllabus. Next slide. Yeah, so again I have that picture here. So what is the principle of operation? The context used to predict the correct pixel is shown above. What does the encoder do? It examines the context pixels. Again, what is context pixel? If you have X as the current pixel, the previously seen neighbors, for example, the previously seen neighbors as A, B, C and D. So this is the context of the pixel X. So the encoder examines the context pixels and decides whether to encode the current pixel X in the run mode or in the regular mode. For example, how it selects the run mode, we'll see. if the context suggests that the pixels y, z, etc. So these are the pixels y, z following the current pixel are likely to be identical. For example, if this pixel represents 1 and the next pixel also represents 1, next pixel also represents 1, so they are same values. So in this case the encoder selects the run mode, otherwise what will it select? Regular mode. It means there are two modes for JPEG LS. So let's see what is the regular mode. So in this case the further pixels are not same. So in the regular mode the encoder uses the values of context pixels A, B and C, that is the previous pixels, to predict the pixel X. Now why it does this? Because we have seen so far that most of in continuous tone images the color does not change drastically. So mostly the previous value, from the previous values, some values we can predict the next value. So that is what is happening here. The encoder uses the value of context pixels A, B and C to predict pixels X and subtracts the prediction from the actual X to obtain the prediction error. Then what it does, it works on the error. That is what is written here. This error is then corrected by a term that depends on the context. So this you will not find in any book what it exactly does. They will just write this vague language, because the JPEG team won't tell us what they have exactly done, right? So they don't tell the exact method, they will just give an overview. So none of the book will mention what exactly is there. So that is why some of the students might think I am telling vaguely. So it is given vaguely only in the books. So this error is then corrected by a term that depends on the context and encoded again with a Golem code. So this is for what? Regular mode. So let's see what happens if the run mode is there. So in the run mode, the encoder starts at the current pixel X and finds the longest run of pixels that are identical to context pixel A. So let's see, this is my context pixel. So if y and z are same, it will just run the length and it will select the run mode. So the encoder does not extend this run beyond the end of current image row. Means it will not go in the next row, right? So since all the pixels in the run are identical to A, only the length of the run needs to be encoded. So what this line means is, let's just see that. So let's see, run length encoding example. So let's directly go to images. Let's find a good enough image. Yeah, this one looks good. Yeah. Oops, it is slow. Yeah, so this is the example of run length encoding. Let it load. Yeah, so this is the original stream, bit stream, which is to be encoded. So it is a binary stream. So if you observe 0 0 0 0 0 0, so it is a run of how many 0 bits? 6 0 bits. So if you calculate this, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14. So this is a run of 14 1 bits. So a run of 14 1 bits. Similarly, you can calculate here. So what you get, we represent each run in the original bit stream. Okay, forget about this. So what is happening? There are 6 zeros, then 14 ones, then 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13, then 13 zeros and 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 ones. So sequence of runs we note. So we take 0 colon 6, then 1, number of ones were 14, number of zeros were 13, number of ones were 9. So this is what we write. So the resulting 5-bit bytes are what? So we have 6 zeros. So we write this 0 as it is. So we take 6 as what? So 6 is encoded as what? Binary number. So 0 1 1 0. If it was 7, what we would write? 0 1 1 1. Then we have 1, so we take 1 as it is. Then 14 is what in binary? 1 1 1 0. So if it was 15, it is 1 1 1 1. So if it is a number greater than 15, we encoded it that way. So that in the same way the decoder is informed. So then we have 0, 13 is what? 1 1 0 1. And then 1 as it is, 9 is 1 0 0 1. So just take this, concatenate them, and we will get the compressed bit stream. So this 42, these total bits were how many? 42. So we have compressed this to what? 20 bits. So for example, if it was a 10 GB file, we have now compressed it to only 5 GB. So compression ratio of 2:1 or 50% compression, right? Accidentally, yeah. So this is what is run length encoding. So it is taking a run and then encoding it along the length. So that's why it is called as run length encoding. So let's again switch to slideshow. Yeah, so that is what this last sentence means. So then decompression. So again the decoder is not substantially different from the encoder. So JPEG LS is a nearly symmetric compression method. So the steps are almost same. So next topic is JPEG 2000. So now why we have JPEG now, we have JPEG LS, so why we need a new standard? So that we'll study in this slide. So JPEG standard provides excellent performance above a rate of 0.25 bits per pixel. So for one pixel represents 0.25 bits or more, JPEG is a very good method. But however, if we have lower rates, that is let's say 0.2 bits per pixel, there is a sharp degradation in the quality of the reconstructed image. That is, the compression doesn't work well for that images. So to correct this and other shortcomings, the JPEG committee initiated work on another standard which was commonly called as JPEG 2000. So that is the need for this standard. So this can be a Viva question. So this is the block diagram of JPEG 2000. The name of the slide is wrong actually. So what is the block diagram? Initially we have an input image, then we apply a transform called as color space transform, then we apply another transform called as wavelet transform, then as usual for compression then we use quantization to approximate the values, then we use some sort of coding, it might be Huffman coding, etc. So it is called as in general entropy coding, and then finally we get the compressed image. So let's see these things one by one. So the main things here are color space transform and wavelet transform. So we will not discuss this, so we will just write one sentence. So what sentence we will write in the exam? That after the output of the wavelet transform, the numbers from the wavelet transform are quantized and finally encoded using any of the encoding techniques to finally get the compressed image. So what is a color space transform? Now we know that each color image consists of RGB components and each RG and B consists of 8 bits. So the total components are of 24 bits. So usually color images are stored as a series of RGB triplets. That's what I said. However, what is the problem here? The RGB color spaces is not color consistent. Means what? There is a slight variation in one color component of a pixel might lead to noticeable artifacts in the other color components. So these are called as color artifacts. So if you don't know what are color artifacts, let's see what are color artifacts. So color artifacts example. So again we'll see some images. So I don't see a clear image depicting that. So let's just write color artifacts. Yeah, this is it. So this is the original image, and this you see, these are called as color artifacts. So this is the problem in JPEG. Okay, so these are color artifacts. So this problem is there. So what we do? So there exist other color spaces apart from RGB in which this problem is not there. So in which this is not true. So this initial color transform step is thus performed to convert RGB images into some other convenient representation. So color transform, but color transform does not, and what is the advantage? Color transform does not have great impact on lossless compression since the image data is restored exactly by the decoder. So then we have wavelet transform. So the benefit of applying wavelet transform is what? The transform data is more compressible. So we can achieve compression because of this transform. Again, we can achieve transform, that is achieve compression, that is it aids in compression. What will actually compress is quantization. So since wavelet transform separates a tile into 4 subbands, so this is my original tile, so I convert it into a subband, then I further convert it into this frequency component. So these are low frequency components, then low high, high low and high high. So these are the 4 subbands. Again it is given vaguely. So then what are the, so after this we have to write that we apply quantization and encoding techniques to finally get the compressed image. So then what are the advantages of JPEG 2000? So better image quality than JPEG at the same file size, or alternatively 25 to 35% smaller file sizes with the same quality. So this is the advantage. Then good image quality at low bit rates, that is what was the main goal of JPEG 2000. Then low complexity option for devices with limited resources. So means if I have a very outdated PC, so I can select low complexity for JPEG 2000. So that was not the case with JPEG. Then region of interest, again very good option. One can define some more interesting parts of image which are coded with more bits than surrounding area. So if you want a more good quality in a part of the image rather than other areas, that you can do, which is called as region of interest. The JPEG 2000 is more suitable to web graphics than baseline JPEG. So then finally, this is the last part of the module, which is DPCM. So what does DPCM stand for is differential pulse code modulation. So it is a member of the family of differential encoding comparison methods. So in a while we'll see what are differential encoding techniques. So it is a form of DPCM. So it is based on the well-known fact that neighboring pixels in an image are correlated. So again we are using the form of continuous tone image or correlated data, which we are using in DCT, JPEG, LS, etc. Right? So correlated values are generally similar. So since they are similar, what is the advantage? The differences are small. So what we do, instead of sending all the values, we send the difference of the values. So we'll send the first data, then we'll just send the difference of the data because they are small. So this will result in what? Compression. And what is the further advantage? Variances of the differences are small. So we have seen in Huffman coding, we require the data with minimum variance. So variances of the differences are always small. So this is a table depicting differential encoding. Why is it advantageous? So this is sin of t and difference. So we have taken 0 to 360 degrees, sin 0 is 0, sin 360 or sin 2 pi is 0. We have increased in steps of 15 degree. So sin 0 is 0, sin 15 is 0.259, sin 30 is 0.5. And then we take the difference. So this is the first thing, so no question of difference. Then we take this difference, it is 0.259. Then 0.5 minus 0.259 is 0.241. Then 0.707 minus 0.5 would be what? 0.207 and so on. So you see these numbers are increasing, right? But you see these numbers are very close by, right? And these numbers are increasing then decreasing, right? So what is the advantage? The differences are very small. So if you see the range of differences is what? 0.259 to minus 0.259. So minus 0.259 to 0.259 values only you have to transmit. But if you take sine values, you have to transmit what? You have minus 1 to plus 1, because sine theta lies between minus 1 and plus 1. So you have to send higher values. So here you have to send lower values. So low transmission, so low compression is achieved. Right? So this is the advantage of differential coding. So how we encode using DPCM? So differential encoding methods calculate the differences, obviously. So if I have the original data AI, and before that AI I have another number, so that is AI minus 1. So di is what? AI minus 1 is the difference between consecutive data items AI, and we encode the di, not the actual data. We encode what? Di. So the first data term A0, so it is the first data term, so it cannot be taken as difference. So similar to this thing. So what we do, that it is either encoded separately by some technique, or it is written on the compressed stream in raw format, that is in the original format. So in either case, the decoder can decode and generate A0 in exact form, so it is not getting compressed. So in principle, any suitable method, lossy or lossless, can be used to encode the differences. So it depends on us which method we require. So in practice, quantization is often used, resulting in lossy compression. The quantity encoded is not the difference di, but a similar quantized number that we denote by di prime. So what is this di prime? This di prime is nothing but di plus qi, where qi is the quantization error. So this is what is the process we just explained here in the form of a block diagram. So this you can draw in the exam. The only thing is a predictor which is extra given in the diagram. So you can just draw it. Again, it is given vaguely, so we will not consider this. So this is what we study in this module. So these are the references. I have mainly taken all the stuff from data compression, the complete reference, David Solomon. So anyways, I'll share this PPT in classroom, so you can refer them. Okay, thank you.